Okay, guys, I'm going to try it here. I see some of you have made it over here, so let's do this. Hopefully, it'll keep working. All right, I see my face. That's exciting. And I see some of you are chatting. That's good. Yay, you figured out how to use it. I'm just going to sign off from Facebook on my phone because it's a lost cause. I have no idea why it wouldn't work. I tested it last night and it was working fine. I figured there's no point in trying to log in again this morning because, what am I going to do at the last minute? And clearly I should have, because I should have said, screw it, let's go to YouTube. It's probably going to take a minute or two for people to figure out how to come over here and try it over here, but there we go. But this is just too good of a topic not for us to talk about, and so I want us to talk about it, even if only a few of us make it over here. And I can always just put the recording in Facebook, so that's what we'll do, right? All right. So I'm glad some of you have made it over here. So let's get into this, and I'll figure out the technical stuff with Facebook later. But maybe it's just like too many people on Facebook. I don't know. Whatever. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to do You Be the Behavior Consultant, a live stream I try to do every Monday at 11, but Facebook is being persnickety about it. So we're going to do it here on YouTube. How does it work? I present a topic for discussion, and then I'll ask some questions. We'll explore the topic with videos, and then we'll recap it. And today's topic is such a good one. So I'm glad that some of you have made it over here. I haven't done this on YouTube before, so we'll see how it goes. I can see that we've got a chat running here on the right, and hopefully more people will find the link that I posted in Facebook and make it on over here so that you can join in the discussion. Definitely let me know if you're able to hear and everything. I see that a few of you have said hello and that you're here. I guess I could do this on my phone so that I can hear myself as well. I haven't done that yet. Let me do that. I'm going to go to my YouTube page on my phone and just make sure that I can monitor a little bit too. There we go. I see myself. Wow, cool. Yeah, make sure that I can hear everything too, hear what you hear. You can hear me. Oh, good. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks for the feedback. That's awesome. So our first question, of course, is what is a principle and what is a procedure, and why is understanding the difference so important? So if anybody's feeling, oh, yay, yes, Adrian's made it here too, cool, and you can hear me, you can see me. We didn't do too bad on the late start, only 20 minutes late this time around, and I am recording this so I can still go back and post it to Facebook later so people can catch the replay, even though it's a little bit start for those people that prefer Facebook. And of course, this is all those of you that are members of animaltrainingfundamentals.com, all this goes in the membership program too, so you can always catch the replay there with the jump licks and all that fun stuff. All right, so back to our question. Anybody feel like being brave and trying to define what a principle is versus a procedure? This is not something that we tend to think about very much, but as you're going to find as we get chatting here, it's really kind of a cool thing to think about, and it's really going to change the way you think about training. That's why I was so excited to do this topic, which blows my mind. Of all the things that we have discussed this past year, of all things, for the live stream not to work on Facebook, I cannot believe this is the one that's giving us technical difficulties. There are definitely gremlins in the system. But it's all right. We're still going to post this one on Facebook once we're finished recording here, so no worries. So what do you guys think? Anybody feeling somewhat brave about trying to come up with a definition for either one of these? One is an ethical consideration versus the practical application. Interesting. Those are there's some things to think about there. Yeah, for sure. Guessing principle is textbook definition. Procedure is what you actually do and can change depending on the animal and the conditions. Ooh, very nice. I like that one. Yeah, some good stuff there. Very cool. I'm going to see if I can hear myself in my phone now as I listen. Oh, yeah, I can hear myself now. Oh, this is so fun for me testing out this new technology. Oh, and Annetta joined us too. Yay, she figured it out. I'm figuring out things too. New technology here. Who knows? Maybe we're going to be new YouTubers instead of Facebookers. And Gary's saying we had sabotage on our principles versus procedure talk. I don't know. There's definitely something afoot here. I don't know, but I may be a new YouTube fan now and transitioning from Facebook here, and maybe we put the recording over on Facebook later. Who knows? But this was oh, that's true. We can just cross post from YouTube to Facebook. That's easy enough. All right. So we were working on our definitions of principles versus procedure. Adrian and Debbie gave us some good things to think about there. I really like that. Any other people want to add to this? I know we are still waiting for people to figure out how to migrate over from Facebook. We're going to be definitely considering it as a full-time thing to migrate from Facebook to YouTube, because man, that was no fun. Yeah, I'm also having like a bad hair day. I ran out of product and ugh. So it's all gremlins in the system today. Oh, and Debbie says Facebook seems to be blocking broadcasting. So it's not just me. It's been happening to other people. Could be. I don't know. I've been so buried in books lately. So we are studying measuring behavior now. So I've got some like cool ideas for future stuff to talk about that that'll be relatable, not so much like boring stuff about measuring behavior. And it's very enriching to find you on YouTube. Oh, cool. All right. I know I've been kind of off of YouTube for the last few years. Who knows? Maybe it's going to be my new home. I know Facebook gets overwhelming. I'm sure you guys have found it to be that way as well these years. It's changed quite a bit. All right, so back on our topic here, principles and procedures. So anybody else feel like jumping in there, or should I get into a definition since we've been off to a late start anyway? Oh, I forgot my prompting slide too. Maybe we could do examples. Anybody want to give an example of what a principle might be, or an example of a procedure? That might be a nice way of helping us talk about this topic a little bit more. Or an example of a procedure you have used and what might be a component of a procedure. So those are a few more prompts there to help you think about what is a principle versus a procedure. I'm liking all your guys' comments here, and a little bit more feedback from me about switching from Facebook to YouTube, which may be appealing, is that reading your chat is so much easier on YouTube than it is in Facebook, because on Facebook it scrolls away from me, and on YouTube I can see it much easier. We may become YouTubers, guys. Any other thoughts? Or I can get into our official definition here. Give you a little time to add if you feel like it. And again, maybe an example might be an easy thing to offer. An example of a principle or an example of a procedure. Anybody feel like throwing something in there? We're all too flustered from having to deal with technology challenges. I know it's throwing my game. All right. Okay, well, while you guys think, maybe I will go for a definition, because then we get to look at a beautiful gorilla. All right, so a principle, and I think Adrian was really quite on it here. Principle is a functional relationship between a behavior and one or more of its controlling variables. And I know that sounds really, really fancy, but really that is kind of what we were saying. It's the textbook definition. This is basically what was discovered in the laboratory. This is empirical. So that means, it was an experiment. Basically, we derived it from experiments demonstrating this functional relationship. So an example of a principle might be reinforcement or punishment or extinction. So those are those things that we studied. This is how we know it works. If we do this, this happens, right? So that's that functional relationship, right? Okay. So that's that textbook definition. I like how Adrian said that. Now, let's talk about what exactly is a procedure. So, a procedure is a course of action intended to achieve a result in the delivery of a behavior treatment or intervention. And so, the success of a procedure used is dependent on basically, what the practitioner knows, what the animal trainer knows. So how well do you understand the principles, which we've already talked about, the different tactics that we might use? Remember, we did a whole thing about timeout and all the different tactics there are for timeout, because there's lots of different tactics for timeout, and the techniques, and that might be your mechanics, like, how good are you at presenting that target? Because we know there's lots of details that go into that. Remember, Annetta and I did a podcast on that. And as well as your competency in their application. And that takes practice and experience, right? We know that, anybody who's taught somebody how to do this for the very first time knows that it takes practice. Anybody who's gone to a chicken workshop knows you run through all those drills so that you become fluent at presenting that cup in just the perfect spot so that all the chicken food doesn't go flying all over the place. So the chicken goes, hey, I don't need to peck at your dot. There's food all over the place. So there are many procedures that can lead to your desired results. And we know that one procedure may be, more appropriate for your particular desired goal than a different procedure. And some procedures are going to result in more risks and benefits than the other ones. So we're always kind of weighing that out, doing our risk-benefit analysis, which we've talked about in some of our other live streams. And so that's why we do that risk-benefit analysis, to determine if this particular procedure is going to be the best or the optimal one for what you're trying to accomplish. So this is a really important distinction, because there's a difference between principles and procedures, right? So when we think about principles, that definition is pretty consistent, right? It's been defined by all those experiments. But when we think about our procedures, there's really millions of them, right? Procedures can be super, super, super varied, right? We have no idea what the procedure is going to look like until we come up with what that procedure is going to look like for the animal that we're going to be working with, and the problem or the behavior goal. And so that's why positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment never look the same, because the procedure is going to be different based on the individual set of circumstances that we're working with for that particular behavior goal, that particular animal. And so what's happening in real life when we're creating a procedure is we're using a combination of those principles to create our procedure. And so this is one of the reasons why those of you that attended ABMA notice that I mentioned something about the hierarchy, and it's because the hierarchy is confusing principles with procedures. Because you'll notice that the hierarchy has a list of principles in a specific order to use them, but a principle is not the same as a procedure, and that's why we had that some of that discussion that people were getting kind of a little sensitive about negative reinforcement. And we had those presentations that included the use of negative reinforcement. Now, if you go back and you think about all those different presentations, everybody was showing procedures using negative reinforcement. And remember, I said there's a million different procedures, different ways to apply negative reinforcement. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to show you an example of a procedure using negative reinforcement with a proboscis monkey, which is what was up here. Sorry. There's no audio on that slide where the proboscis monkey is, so I couldn't talk on the right. So, oops, sorry. So that monkey on the right with the big nose. And so this was the video that I'm going to show you. This monkey has been showing aggressive responses to keeper whenever they enter the enclosure. I'm just going to go to my face. Whenever the people would enter the enclosure. And so some of you saw that presentation I did at ABMA using, we call it the constructional approach because you're going to start at with an aversive stimulus at such a low potency, and you're going to try and construct a new behavior to replace that. In this case, we're going to construct calm behavior, but it is using negative reinforcement in this example. And so what you're going to see is as I'm going to approach this male monkey, and he gives me a response where he's like, oh, I don't like you being here, by displaying. And the moment that he relaxes is when I'm going to remove myself. So this is an application of negative reinforcement, but it's a procedure using that principle. So let's take a look at what that looks like. And there's no audio. Well, there is audio, but it's not, you can't really hear it because it's through glass. So let's look at it. So I don't know if you can see it, but he's the second one down on that tree that's kind of in front of me. And so I'm going to approach, and I'm going to see until I see some kind of response. I think he jumps there. So he kind of lifted up. So I'm going to wait. And so did I remove myself there? Yeah, so I like that. So I remove myself when he kind of relaxes a little bit. Okay, so that is negative reinforcement. So I'm going to approach again because he doesn't like people. That's his thing. And he's very hard to see, I know, in this video clip. Okay, and so now he jumps down and he's displaying at me. I don't really like that behavior, so I'm not going to leave just yet. I'm going to wait until he gives me something. Oh, he looked away, so I remove myself the moment he looked away. Okay, so I'm saying I'll take that behavior. So now he's calm again, so I'm going to approach again. And he's displaying at me, so I stop. And he gives me some calm, so I walk away. So I'm trying to replace that aggressive behavior with calm behavior. I'm saying calm behavior will give you distance, will cause me to go away, instead of aggressive behavior causing people to go away. And in fact, his aggressive responses are diminishing. He's actually starting to figure out, oh, I don't have to give those big displays of aggressive behavior to get her to go away. It's starting to increase these calm responses, which is exactly what the goal was. And so he's, again, diminishing with the aggressive responses and giving me increased calm responses. He's starting to realize, oh, calm responses get her to go away. That's nice. I like that. And so what's happening now is I've kind of reached the limit of what I can do, because there is a moat there. It's a drop off, so I can't get any closer to him, and he's really not, displaying for me anymore. He's giving me mostly calm behavior, which is great. So what I would have done if I could is I would have started transitioning to positive reinforcement. I would have seen if I could start pairing good, desired things, appetitive things with my presence, because I had some corn with me. But I wasn't able to do that because I couldn't get any closer. So I just left it on the stump there. Okay, so it's just starting to repeat now. So that was a procedure applying the principle of negative reinforcement. Okay, so I want you to kind of absorb that. Now we're going to look at another example of a procedure in which which I'm applying negative reinforcement. And I shared this one at ABMA. This is the one with the tiger, and it's got some other principles in there too. And you're going to see in the beginning where the keeper is trying to get the tiger to target. and using positive reinforcement, but you can see the body language of the animal is very uncomfortable. Tiger is kind of fighting through this, kind of fear aggression to do the targeting behavior. Then you're going to see a similar procedure like you saw with the monkey, where I'm going to use that approach and retreat when I see calm behavior from the tiger. And then when I can't get any closer, I switch to asking the tiger to target for positive reinforcement, and you're going to see much better body language from the tiger. So again, a procedure using negative reinforcement, but also positive reinforcement at the end. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking that he's looking at me, right? And he's a little concerned. But now he's not. And see how he's not? I would walk away from that. I would be like, okay, that's cool. How he's looking now. I'm really trying to get up there. Yes, ma'am.
Itu sudah bertambahlah kalamnya.
So that's the idea. So now I'm going to show you another example in which negative reinforcement is being used. Not so much a training example, but I want you to see that, well, it is a training example, but it's not one that from my catalog of things. But I want you again to see that here we are talking about negative reinforcement, but you'll see that it's very different from the two examples that you just saw. And so this is where I want you again to think about the difference between principles and procedures. So these people are using a different procedure to get to a desired result. And so this is why you can't always say that, well, it's negative reinforcement. Yes, they may be using that principle, but they're using a different procedure to get the desired result. And you know what? I think it doesn't have audio, so I can probably talk over it. So this was, just a little news clip, and showing some people doing some rabbit jumping with their rabbits. And not everybody trains rabbit jumping the same way, but I think at this particular event, it looked predominantly like negative reinforcement was used more to get movement forward. And so in this case, touching the hindquarters of the rabbit was getting this movement forward, right? So a little escape and avoidance behavior, or action, behavior to move away from an aversive to get the rabbits to jump over. Now, again, not everybody uses that approach to get rabbits to do jumping. But again, a different procedure, right? All right, so now we're going to look at one more example. Sorry, trying to get to my face. We're going to look at one more example of negative reinforcement, and remember, it's also positive punishment involved there as well. And this is the stuff that I think when people think of negative reinforcement, they immediately go to. This is where their head goes to. And so they categorize all negative reinforcement as this. And so this is where I want to help remind you to think about a procedure. That negative reinforcement can look like many different things, because depending on the conditions and the person applying it, and again, what is the procedure? And so you have to decide what type of procedure are you going to use. And you don't have to do what we're going to look at next. And I would assume that pretty much everybody here would never do what we're going to look at next. So let's take a look at this example of negative reinforcement and positive punishment. Right, so I'm going to go back to my face here. Right, so I think what we tend to find is that when people discuss negative reinforcement, their head goes right there, right? And so when they see something like what you saw with the monkey or with the tiger, their head is thinking what you just saw with the horse. But those are all negative reinforcement, but they're different procedures, right? And you guys are, I don't want to keep talking at you here. So maybe you guys, have some examples of different procedures. So how do we, so I think when we put ourselves in that position, when we say, oh, negative reinforcement's bad, boy, we're missing out on some things when we could do what happened with the tiger or with the monkey there if we assume it's like what you saw with the horse there. So how do we find out whether, it's the right thing or not? Do you guys remember what we can do to determine whether something is an appropriate procedure or not? We've talked about it before. Any ideas? Let's see. I'm looking at some of your comments here. What are some of the things we've talked about in the past that help us determine whether a procedure is an appropriate one or not? I have to remember some of my things here. Do you guys remember? Whoops. This wonderful risk-benefit analysis. So a risk-benefit analysis is a deliberate evaluation of potential risks, limitations, side effects, costs and benefits, treatment outcomes, efficiency, and all those wonderful things. So our things are looking at greater benefits than risks. And when we look at something like that, we don't just go, oh, it's negative reinforcement. We're looking at a lot of details. So you might remember that one live stream we did where we looked at response interruption and redirection. And so you really break things down. We don't just go negative reinforcement. We're talking details, real details about what you're going to do. What does your procedure involve? And as you saw, there's a lot of things to evaluate. So I'm going to give you, we're going to look at something where we're going to really evaluate some things. So let's look at this. So here's where we get a little bit more interactive again. So are these the same procedure? So let's say we had a lion, a guinea pig, and a horse, and you wanted to withhold food for 4 hours from each of these animals. Is that the same? Is that going to have the same effect on motivating operations for each of those animals? And I know you may not have experience with those different species, as some of you may not. But what do you think? I mean, we can talk about that. How does 4 hours without food affect a lion versus a guinea pig versus a horse? Anybody have anything that they might say about that? What do you guys think? Is it the same procedure or not? What are your thoughts? Let's see. So Adrian says a guinea pig probably needs food more often than a lion or a horse. Yeah, you're right. In fact, like guinea pigs and rabbits, if they don't have food going through their GI tract on a regular basis, they can actually have life-threatening health issues because they can have GI stasis. So that's really significant. Yep, it's pretty bad. Yeah, they're not the same procedures, are they? This is where we go back to what we were saying about earlier about application of procedures. Your practitioner needs to know about ethology. They need to know about how these procedures are going to impact their learner. Let's see, did I miss something? Antecedents the learner is in, what the learner could benefit from the type of procedure. Yeah, so the specific conditions. It will be different for the different species. Lion wouldn't mind so much, and the horses are grazers, so need access to food more often, and it's bad for guinea pigs. Yep. Didn't know about that, about guinea pig digestion. Learned something new today. Yep. So yeah, these are these things that, I think, and sometimes when I can look at, I'm in school right now, and I look at the things that the people, other people in my classes, they only have to learn about humans, although sometimes humans with different conditions, that may have different health or physical issues that may affect their ability to do things. But, we have all these different species that have challenges or different conditions that we have to think about. So we have to learn a lot of things. It's a big deal. And one of the questions you may ask is, like, when was the last time this animal had access to food? Like for a lion, if it just, did a carcass feed, 4 hours may be nothing. It may be like, I don't even want food in 4 hours. So your food, what you may have to offer may have no value to the animal if you're considering using food as a reinforcer. So let's look at the next one. So now let's say we're going to limit the movement of the animal. So maybe a lion is going to be like in a bedroom, sort of like a back area, as opposed to out on a savanna. And let's say the guinea pig is going to be confined into a crate in terms of limited movement. And let's say the horse is going to be confined to a trailer. Maybe they're being transported from one place to another. And so how is that going to affect what you can deliver as a consequence for, let's say you're going to provide the ability to move more as a reinforcer for the animal. So how does that, what do you guys think about that as a procedure? Not that you necessarily would do it intentionally, but let's say that, that opportunity existed for some reason and you were going to use that now as a reinforcer. What do you think about that as its effect on motivating operations for those individual species? What do you think? Is it the same? And this is where I go back to when we evaluate procedures. And motivating operations might be part of your procedure. Sometimes we have to consider those things, that our animal isn't necessarily interested in what we have to offer as a reinforcer, and so we may be changing conditions so that what we have to offer is going to make the consequence have more value. Not that I would necessarily be doing these things, but I was just looking for examples. So what do you guys think? Would a lion care about being in a bedroom area versus being out in the savannah? Would being in a crate for 6 hours change the value of the consequence for the guinea pig? Would being in a trailer change the consequence of having access to an open space for a horse? And again, these are all hypothetical. So again, they're not the same procedure. Lion maybe not as big a deal as the horse or the guinea pig. Lion rests more often, not as active as horses. Guinea pigs usually are. Yeah, again, so we're looking at ethology, right? And again, we also have to break it down to the individual. That's another question, of course, that we would be looking at for our individual things. And I think about, guinea pigs do like enclosed spaces. So the guinea pig may be like, hey, I'm cool here. Whereas the horse may be like, might be not as happy being in that enclosed space. And again, we would have to go back to what are the individual interests. So someone just found our live stream. Yay. And Christina's saying, meaning horses and guinea pigs move more often to find food. Oh, yep, that makes sense. Got you there. Good point. Many horses are kept in stalls. This could lead to undesirable behavior, chewing wood, for example. Potentially, yep, something we might be observing for if being confined to a trailer is not something that this animal is used to. Yeah. So, all right, let's look at another one. What about being separated from conspecifics? So what about the lion, the guinea pig, and the horse? Again, so would being separated from another individual animal be what would be the potential outcome of being separated from conspecifics? And again, we haven't taken it down to the individual level yet, asking about these individuals. And Adrian says, I think guinea pigs might like the hiding places. Yeah, and I would say in general, their guinea pigs do enjoy cover and hiding if they have access to it. And again, we're talking generalization here. We haven't asked about individuals. None of them would like being separated from their buddies, is what Annetta is saying. Yeah, I would say in general, as long as they have a history of being with other animals. Might need to consider changing reinforcement types. I got you, Annetta. She's just correcting her typo there. Sure. Yeah. Male lion, probably not so much. Lioness, probably more, as they tend to live in groups. Gotcha. Yep. Yeah. And I do think about horses are herd animals, so prefer being with others. Adrian says, yeah. And that depends on relationship with conspecific. Yep, true. Of course, we would always be asking on the individual level, how do they feel about their buddies in general? And all tend to be more social than other species. Probably not so great to be separate. Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things I think about too with guinea pigs, kind of like capybaras, that the longer they're separated from each other, the more we have to worry about what might happen when you bring them back together, that there might be an increased likelihood that there might be fighting when they're brought back together. So we always have to think about that. Just some comments about knowledge about social behavior. Yeah. So this is that thing where, even though we're just comparing about, time being, deprived of certain things and how it might affect motivating operations, that is a procedure. And I use this one sort of as an example, but you can use this for any of the procedures, whether we're talking about, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment, extinction, differential reinforcement. It's all about how you apply it and the individual species, the ethology, the individual. So, it's kind of the point I'm trying to make here is that we just can't say it's black and white. Let's see some more comments. Let's see. Okay. Oh, somebody's got to take off. Don't worry, we're recording it. Yay! I did do that. You don't have to worry about that. I did record it. Even though we had our technical difficulties at the beginning. So let's see. I'm going to go back to just that reminder. Let's see. I feel like I missed a little slide here. So let me go up a bit. Oh yeah. I think this one. Yes, here we go. Going back to, it's a question about fighting. This is fighting after a brief separation is caused by the smell. That's a great question. I don't know. This just has to do with the ethology of guinea pigs and like capybaras. You know, for some reason, and they're very closely related, guinea pigs and capybaras. They do have a problem with when an individual is separated from the group for a certain amount of time. There tends to be more just fighting when that individual comes back in, and it does happen with other species of animals. We do see that. So you'll tend to see this in zoological facilities that, especially if an individual has some kind of health problem and they need to be separated from the group, there will be things that we do to try and integrate that individual back into the group, or we'll try to have him be, either nearby or with other members of the group if we can, as quickly as possible, so that we can reduce the inclination for those kinds of problems. So yeah, it's just something that happens. I don't necessarily have a great explanation for you as to why that is. I don't know. I don't want to make guesses as to why that happens for sure. I don't know if it has to do with preventing. Oh, and so we've got a comment. Yes, with rabbits and hamsters too. Okay, yeah. I'm not 100% sure, why it happens, so I don't want to make an assumption on it. It's a great question, though. So one of the things about procedures, getting back on our topic here, is that, Christina says, it almost seems like they try to find the new hierarchy or equilibrium, and then we mess it up again. Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah. Or maybe it's, maybe if a species that might draw attention to the group because it's, incapacitated, maybe that there's a reason to get that one out of there. I don't know. I'm sure people have looked into it before, but I am not the one that has information on that. So I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouths on that one. Okay, so back on our procedures, they can involve many different principles, right? So, they can involve that combination of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, extinction, lots of different things going on there. And so that's why, when we look at our procedures, it's fun. I think it's fun to sort of break it down and see if you can see what's happening where. And again, if you're, when you're developing your procedures, it's good for you to be able to identify all those different things that you're going to use, and that's going to help you with your risk benefit analysis, of course, too. And some of them may require you to have a plan for establishing operations. That may be part of your procedure as well, and it may include your antecedent architecture. How are you going to set up the environment so that your animal can give you the desired response? We do that a lot, right? So that's part of your procedures as well. And let's see, you may need to, and your procedure may need to be modified or changed as the animal starts to learn. So that's one of the things that you've seen me talk about when I talk about the constructional approach, is that as the animal starts to get comfortable, so let's say I'm the aversive stimulus initially, what I'm trying to do is change the characteristics of me as a stimulus. So at first, I'm teaching the animal that if you show calm body language, I'll go away. And so what I'm trying to do is, now that you're calm when I'm present, let's start teaching you that good things happen when I'm present. So I'm changing the characteristics of me as a stimulus from aversive to appetitive, to something good. So now I'm going to use a different procedure, right? So you're going to change what you're doing in your procedure. So it isn't just one principle that's involved. It can be many principles. And that's why it's not a recipe. Your procedure is always changing, and which is why one procedure may be modified so that it works with your animal. They're very individualized. And again, this kind of goes back to why you can't just go, I'm going to use this first and then that first and then this first and then that next and so on. We are constantly changing and adjusting so that we provide the perfect procedure for what's going on in front of us in that moment. All right. Oh, you guys are just having a little discussion there. Okay, I'll let you keep discussing there. All right, so let's see. Oh, so now I'm going to show you. We've looked at this video before, I think, when we were looking at timeout stuff. But this is a procedure involving several principles. And so this was with an orangutan in Indonesia, where I just wanted to teach her to target a ball with her mouth. And you're going to see that the way this facility is set up, the openings in the mesh are big enough that the animal can reach out with her hands. So I need to I need to respond to that. I can't just have her reaching out to me. So I'm going to have to use a negative punishment procedure in order to teach her that doesn't work, but your hands in does work. So I'm going to use a combination of positive reinforcement when your hands are in, negative punishment when your hands come out, because I need to decrease that behavior. So I'm going to remove the opportunity to get goodies when that happens. And I'm going to positively reinforce when your hands are on the mesh. And then I'm going to continue to have the opportunity to work on positively reinforcing the desired response, which is targeting your mouth to the ball. I don't want to, oh, she can reach pretty far. It's good to know. I don't want her to do that. So I'm going to wait for her hand to go back in. Hand goes in. So I don't want that. So I'm not going to reinforce that. So when she puts her hand back in, I'm going to give her something to teach her that I don't want her to do that. Oh, we have a spitter over there. Put your hand back in. Good. So I'm teaching her just touch with your mouth. Good. I'm saying that's not the right behavior, that's the wrong behavior. Good. That's the right behavior. So I'm going to put the audio down and talk over this for a little bit here. And again, go back to kind of pointing out why it's really important to talk about the different principles involved in this procedure. And the reason I want to be really honest about what's happening here, it's not just positive reinforcement, right? There is negative punishment going on here, is because if we don't acknowledge that, how do we move forward as an animal training industry? I think when we don't acknowledge that we are using all these learning processes to help animals understand what we want them to do, then we're kind of doing our industry a disservice. We're not helping trainers, recognize, that gravity exists. I feel like when we say, oh, we never use negative punishment or we never use timeouts, then, we're kind of selling our industry short, and we're selling our students short that people can't understand these concepts and these principles and how they're applied. And again, like I said, a procedure is, it's as good as the person applying it. So if you are the person who hits horses with sticks to get them to move, then you have a very narrow understanding of procedures. But if you are somebody who can understand that when I step back and withhold food from an animal who's reaching through the bars, then you understand you're using negative punishment, and you're using it in a way that I think is appropriate in this moment, because I don't really have a whole lot of options in that moment. And what we see is that the animal, and Pretty learned in just a few minutes that, oh, I should keep my hands on the mesh. And I don't think that she had, she unfortunately had a huge reinforcement history for sticking her hands through the mesh to get things. And so, in just a matter of minutes, she quickly learned, oh, I should keep my hands on the mesh, at least when this blonde lady is around, and I will get lots of good things. So I think, it's good to have, honest conversations about principles and procedures and how they're applied, so that we all become better educated and have a better understanding of how these processes work. All right. And because, I will be honest with you, it's funny. I hear people saying, I never use punishment and I never use this. And then they throw a video on the internet of them training, and they're using those principles and procedures. So I'm like, I hope you can recognize when you're using them and, what you're talking about, because there they are on the internet for all to see. All right. So moving on, let's go on to our recap then. So a principle is a functional relationship between behavior and one or more of its controlling variables. This is empirical and derived from many experiments demonstrating this functional relationship. So examples of principles of behavior include reinforcement, punishment, extinction, and so on. All right, so we've got our experimental definitions. There we go. We know reinforcement increases behavior. You add or subtract something to increase that behavior. Well, I should say it increases the probability of the likelihood of that behavior occurring in the future. And a procedure is a course of action intended to achieve a result in the delivery of a behavior treatment or intervention. The success of the procedure used is dependent on the practitioner's theoretical understanding of the principles, the tactics, and the techniques, as well as the practitioner's competency in their application. There are many procedures that can lead to desired results, and hopefully we kind of illustrated that today. And if you're not sure if it's a good procedure or not, do a risk-benefit analysis. But, a lot of you have practiced many procedures over and over and over again, so you kind of have a good idea if this is a good procedure or not. And the definition of the principles remain consistent. They're empirically defined, but we know there are a jillion procedures that you could use. And positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment, they're never going to look the same. They're never going to look exactly the same. Even if you practice it, even if you've done it one time over here and one time over there, it's never going to look exactly the same, because every circumstance is different. The animal's different. The way you're doing it is different. The procedure is different based on each individual set of circumstances, which is why you can't say a principle is inherently good or bad. Just doesn't work that way. In real life, we're always using a combination of our principles in our procedures. And that's why, like people say, negative reinforcement can never happen without positive punishments, because they're entwined. It just depends on what behavior you're looking at. This is why you have to have a good understanding of those principles. And the hierarchy, unfortunately, confuses principles with procedures. And if you can wrap your brain around that, you will be freed. Trust me. This is one reason why that's really, if you can free yourself of that, you really have a better understanding of how we do behavior interventions. We're using procedures. And procedures involve principles, but we don't go do this principle first, then this principle first, or next, and then the next principle and the next principle. It's not how it works. Procedures are not recipes, which is why one procedure may need to be modified as you're working with your animal. You're going to be changing things up all the time. And procedures are individualized, which is a super, super good thing. This is why we can be really good and successful with a procedure. But a principle is not individualized. A principle is just a definition. Procedures are the thing. All right. Let's see. I see some more comments. Or is this just conversation between you guys? Yeah, and they can be applied wrong, for sure. They can be applied wrong. This is why, again, it comes back to the experience, and it's great to work with mentors who can help you, and which is why we're constantly monitoring and modifying and changing to try and be better. And I think this is one of the fun things about the science and animal training in general is that it's there is no perfect way, if that makes sense. It might be a good way that worked for that individual that time, but you may find a better way the next time, or you may be able to improve upon it, or somebody may have something to add to that may make it better. And I think that's one of the things that makes this a fun and challenging industry, because we're always seeking a better pathway. There is no recipe. That's, kind of the cool thing about it. There really is no recipe. We do try to find, sometimes like a foundation thing that we can build upon. But again, recipes is sort of, that's the thing that we try to avoid the most, to be honest, because it is about being individualized and what works best for those individual animals. So it's, again, if you can really separate this principles versus procedures, that's going to blow your mind. It's really going to help you think differently about this, and then it'll make it easier for you to not be reactionary when somebody says, oh, this involved negative reinforcement, like when we were talking about the constructional approach and using negative reinforcement in the constructional approach during that presentation at ABMA, or some of the other ones that you saw. Like Hillary gave a great presentation about different applications of it. Annetta gave some really nice examples of where it was useful at their facility. And Darren Minier gave a really great example with some wolves that, were like, so scared, just not into people. People weren't aversive, and, trying to fight through eating food in the presence of people was an aversive to them. So, that'll help you understand that these were procedures that help them have success with those animals, instead of thinking negative reinforcement. You just go, oh, negative reinforcement's a principle, but they used it in a procedure that was a non-coercive procedure. And that will help you understand better. And so when you go back and you think about those videos we watched several different procedures that involve negative reinforcement. Some of them I would not consider. Some of them are ones that I'd be like, nah, that's not how I would apply. I wouldn't hit horses' legs to get them to lift them higher. And for me, I've trained rabbits to do jumping, but I've used positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement. So I wouldn't apply that. Now, what you saw with the monkey and the tiger, to me, those were non-coercive applications of negative reinforcement that were what was appropriate for those individual animals at that time. So, and again, we could transition to positive reinforcement, but negative reinforcement opened the door to allow us to get to that place. So again, a procedure involving those principles. So hopefully that helped you think about that. So if you want to learn more about how that can work, there is an event coming up. And some of you may know Sean and Masa. They were students at University of North Texas at Denton, and they are usually at the Art and Science of Animal Training Conference, and they really have gotten into this constructional approach to animal welfare and training. So those of you who enjoyed that presentation at ABMA where I talked about that a lot, and also Hillary did as well. They're doing an event in July, and they made an announcement recently that they were giving special prices to students, and I think it looks like shelter, zoo employees, veterinary employees. They're giving a 50% discount. So, Joe Lang, who is a student of Israel Gold Diamond, who is the guy who started the whole constructional approach thing. Jesus, many of his students are the ones who really kind of exploded the whole constructional approach thing into the animal training community. They're going to spend 5 days on this topic. So, keep in mind, I am not the one who, started this whole ball rolling. What I learned from those guys, I applied it to exotic animal training with my clients. So I really learned all this stuff from these guys. So if you want to dive even deeper into it, I would recommend checking out this conference coming up. And like I said, it looks like they're giving some good deals. So, learn from some scientists. There they are. I would recommend checking that out. Those of you guys that are members of Animal Training Fundamentals, guess what? We're doing our second Tower Talk. It's tomorrow. So it looks like Tuesdays are Tower Talks. We're trying to do them every other Tuesday. The one we did the other day went 3 freaking hours. Hopefully we will only go an hour this time, but people really enjoyed talking. And so all we're doing is just getting together on Zoom and just chatting about training, which was really fun. And it's just casual. You control your mic, you control your camera. So if you just want to lurk, fine. If you want to get in there and chat, join us. When you log into animaltrainingfundamentals.com, you can either search Tower Talk or you'll find it under the family tab and you'll find the link there. And if you're not a member, and join us. And oh my God, thank you guys for sticking around for this and dealing with the technical difficulties. And we did it. We talked about principles and procedures. I'm so happy. Let's see more comments from you guys. Oh, I like this. Principles are ingredients and procedures, prescription, recipes, and ever changing. Oh, that's a cool way of thinking about it. I like that. Let's see what else. Oh, and and Adrian likes that too. And Carrie says, oh, this was so good and so awesome for future learning opportunities. Thank you. And thank you again. Thank you guys for making, somehow making it here and getting over to YouTube. And, I don't know. We might always have to be on YouTube now. I'll see. I'll be more prepared for next week, so that if this has to be the way it is, this is the way it is. I don't know. Oh my God. And Sorry says, thank you. Really good live stream. I don't have Facebook and saw you were going to be here and liked it. Oh, good. So Allie says YouTube is the way to go. It might be our new home. And then I'll just share it on Facebook later. This may be the way, with a way forward. Well, you know what? Change is okay. We can go with change. And Netta says, thank you. All right, guys. Well, I'm glad we made it work somehow. And it looks like we still kept it to just about an hour. So even though we got a late start, we made it work. And I will share it on Facebook for those who want to watch the replay on Facebook. And we'll figure it out for next week. And of course it'll go in the education program for those of you that are members and always want to refer back to it later and all that fun stuff. All right, guys, thank you so much for bearing with me. Technical difficulties. Oh, and Debbie says, thanks for pressing on and doing this. And thank you guys for hanging in there with me. I do appreciate it. All right, guys. I have some ideas for next week already. I'm excited about that. And we'll be ready for that one. Okay. Take care. We'll see you next time.